Good morning, everybody. Once again, you're welcome to today's episode of the Clean Tech Podcast. This special edition is in partnership with Tech Talk Africa. Tech Talk Africa is a storytelling agency based in Uganda. Today, we'll discuss very intricately the world of clean technology or clean tech. And so the title of this podcast today is Understanding the Clean Tech Revolution in Africa. We all know that Africa is witnessing a remarkable technological reawakening, with various innovations emerging across different sectors. And today we'll explore how clean tech is harnessing this momentum. From leveraging ICT to sustainable energy solutions in Nigeria, aimed at advancing renewable energy, and also to how water is managed in Uganda. So let's begin. Joining us today are three distinguished individuals, two distinguished gentlemen and one lady. With us today, we have Engineer Dominic Gwaman Datong. He is the Director General of the Plateau State ICT Development Agency. He'll be bringing to us valuable insights into the role of ICT and innovation that is driving Nigeria. And of course, we'll be discussing this specifically about Plateau State. You're welcome, sir. Also, we have Mr. Mbaine. I hope I pronounced it right. He's the African Regional Representative of Hydropole, which is based in Uganda. Mr. Bernard will be bringing insights on sustainable management and renewable energy solutions in Uganda, and he will bring to us very unique perspectives on the challenges and the opportunities that clean tech faces in East Africa. You're welcome, Mr. Bernard.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And finally, we have Mr. Bita Rees. She's the CEO of Rees Hub International Ltd, based in Abuja. So as a lady who is playing majorly in the Nigerian tech scene, she will offer valuable insights into the role of innovation and entrepreneurship that is driving the clean tech transition in Nigeria. I can see that she's yet to come on the call, but hopefully when she joins, we'll get to hear from her. So together we'll explore the latest trends and discuss very critical challenges, and also uncover immense potential of clean tech transformation in Africa. So if we're ready, let's get started. I want to start with you, Mr. Bernard, because there has been a lot of conversation around clean tech in Africa in recent times, but a lot of people are left in the dark about this. They want to really understand what clean tech is. So let me ask you, sir, what is clean tech, and how does it apply to Africa, to the African context?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jesse, and thanks for the question. It's my pleasure to join the podcast today and to speak about clean tech. To me, clean tech is generally, to start with, I think clean tech in the simpler version, just for the layman's person to understand, is referring to a diverse number of technologies that do not pollute or do not cause harm to the environment. Okay, so we are talking about technologies for energy production, talk about wind energy, talk about solar energy, talk about a number of these technologies that do not produce emissions, do not cause harm to the environment, and there's quite a number of these technologies. I think this sector has gone quite through a revolution. Looking at a number of years way back, there's quite a revolution in how the technologies work, in the number of technologies that come on the market, and it's a changing sector. There's quite a lot of research that is still going on, so we still see a lot of technologies coming up. We see a lot of digitalization within the sector, and yes, it's an evolving sector. And when we talk about the African context, I think that is what is very important. First of all, we need to note that clean tech is very applicable to Africa, and in very many ways. When I mention that, first of all, I want to start by looking at the diverse resources that we have as Africa. Africa is quite endowed with quite a number of resources that support the development and growth of clean tech, for example. We have quite a lot of resources for hydropower, for example. We have quite a lot of resource for solar. You know that Africa is blessed with quite very high solar irradiation, and so that makes clean tech quite very applicable. We have wind energy resources. We have a number of countries that have very high wind speeds in the north, in the eastern part of the continent, and a number of other areas. And so for me, the abundance of the resource, number one, makes clean tech very applicable and close to us as Africans. But there's also a number of other areas to look at. For example, Africa has very fast growing population, for example. That by its fact means that there's a growing need for energy, and that then calls for a need for a number of technologies, a number of solutions to be able to meet the growing demand of energy as a major need for economic development. But also, I think from that, you need to look at the level of development. Of course, as compared to the rest of the continents, Africa is still a growing continent, and a number of nations within Africa are still developing. And that places Africa in a certain position, which then makes clean tech very relevant, okay? You have quite a very big energy deficit. You have energy poverty in most of the African countries. You have a very big population of Africa that has no access, for example, to electricity, has no access to just the basic source of energy, and still largely depend on fossil fuels, depend on charcoal, firewood, and others, and clean technologies to meet their basic energy needs. So for me, that just alone puts Africa in a position where there is a need for us to relate with clean tech. How do we, put up solutions to be able to meet this demand of energy? How do we innovate more, especially again in this era where we are talking about the rising climate change impacts? Okay, so how do we work with clean energy technologies to be able to curb down the relevant climate change impacts? But as I wind up on that, there is a very big note that we need to all understand. That as we talk about clean tech in the African context, number one, like 3 areas to note. One is we need to be mindful of what applies to Africa. Okay, this is very crucial. what applies to Europe might be quite different from what applies to Africa. And that's what makes it in the African context, okay? So solutions must be adapted to the African context, okay? So that's very important. Number two, there is a very important to note is that we need also understand the needs of the African people. What do they really need? At the moment, we are at different levels of development with the rest of the continents. So what may be the basic need for Africans now may be different from the basic need for Europeans. There is quite a very big gap of energy access, for example. So Africans need first to get access to the energy. So as we get solutions, as we talk about clean tech, we need to be mindful of what are the particular needs of the different African continents and the African people. And lastly on that is the aspect of affordability, because that then plays so much when we're talking about clean tech. Can we look at the different affordability levels? What technologies can we deploy in Africa that are affordable, good quality, but then are able to meet the right needs of the Africans? So those three key aspects should be put into consideration as we look at clean tech in the African context. I want to stop here. Thank you.
Very instructive, Mr. Bernard, especially when you mentioned that clean technology solutions should be looked at in the African context, and that African solutions should be tailored specifically to, our experiences, and our perspective. And so I like also the fact that you intricately, mentioned that there are solutions around climate change and environmental pollution, because that is essentially the bane of some of the challenges that Africa is facing today. Thank you very much. And let me come to you, Honorable Sir. So, given the context of this conversation, I wanted to find out: are there any ethical, considerations coming from the information and communication tech aspect, such as, let's say, data privacy and all of those potential risks associated with the deployment of ICT in the context of clean tech in Africa? And then how can Africa leverage its youthful population that is interplaying with ICT right now to drive innovations in the clean tech sector?
Okay, thank you very much. You welcomed me at the beginning of the program. I couldn't speak because I was having some issues with my technology, but I'm back now. So thank you for welcoming me. I'm happy also to be here to put a voice to this conversation, which is not African, but worldwide. As we transit from the fossil fuels that are becoming a problem to our climate and the humans or living things, including plants and animals, as we engage in the ICT world, lots of things are moving online, and I think there's some ethical considerations that are required to be sometimes you need to consent to some long agreements where the person that is putting it over there does not, he knows you won't be able to read it. At the end of the day, it makes you to accept some terms that are not really clear to you. That is a very deliberate thing to sometimes lure you into using some of your data, private data, that ordinarily you may not want anybody to have. So there's supposed to be some sense of responsibility when we are deploying applications online or ICT solutions, so that at the end of the day, we're not luring people into providing some data. At the end of the day, we sell it for our own personal needs, especially with lots of digital identities scattered around the world now in different servers. It's possible that somebody just harvesting your data in order to sell it to one or two people for their own benefits. While that may be useful to you as a person, it's important that you have informed consent, not just a consent, but informed consent of whatever it is that we are trying to do. On the other part, Africa is, I think it has it's said to be having the youngest population, and that means in the near future, the world will actually be depending on us. In fact, it started depending on us already, because we tend to see, like in Nigeria, we talk about the Japa syndrome, where our young people have to go and support the Western world in running their systems. We must leverage on the young people to ensure that this clean tech, green tech, or whatever it is that we call it, that we adopt and adapt it for our society here, just like Bernard had said. Technology is something you can actually buy on the shelf, just like you buy biscuits. As long as it has been developed already, you can actually take it. Technology in itself is nothing but the way you put it into use. And probably what we need to look at more is how do we push more people to accept this technology. As the cost of these green or clean techs are very high, it's important that we see how we can push a large group of people to support the creation of, the deployment of such technologies. Because on individual basis, if we do it, you find out that the cost will be too much on the person. Some will be able to afford it, others will not be able to afford it. So it's good that we make it like more of a community infrastructure than to make it like an individual thing. So we must leverage on our youth in the manufacturing. Since it's really into the manufacturing, but leverage also on the cases in having people to clean tech. Things are very rise, and good thing is, I think the need for energy of today is lower than the need of say 50 years ago, because there are developments of different devices that are require less energy, and also with lots of things going online. You find out that the need to burn energy, like in automobiles and others, is actually reducing. So it's a good point for us to move from the fossil fuels to renewable energies like that. I think I would like to stop here.
Very interesting. Thank you, sir. Very instructive. You mentioned that young people are technologically garnered in this generation, and therefore it is essential that they use their opportunities, they use their knowledge and all they have to innovate, to create solutions that are, of course, intricate for this generation. Thank you very much, sir. I want to go back to Mr. Bernard and ask him a question that is more direct now to Uganda, to his home country. Uganda is a country in East Africa, and very recently I have followed the tech development there to see that a lot of young people are playing greatly in the tech sector, and especially as it concerns renewable energies. So how is Uganda addressing these challenges of climate change beyond, of course, other innovations that are coming on, especially in energy poverty? Because again, it's a country in Africa, and we know that Africa has a shortage, an immense shortage of energy. So I want to know how Uganda is playing in this space, how it's addressing the challenge of energy poverty, and what clean tech solutions there have been in recent times in Uganda, because I know that young people have been interplaying in that space. A lot of innovation is coming up. So Mr. Bernard, can you tell us?
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. Thank you for that question. Yeah, so to start with, you need to note that Uganda is one of those countries where okay, we have our electricity generation being significantly generated from renewable energy resources. Just to start with, our generation mix currently, we talk about just around 2 gigawatts of total generation capacity, but over 90% of this is from renewable resources. Okay, so for me, that's a very important message to start with. Again, because of what I mentioned, most of the African countries endowed with quite enough resources to be able to meet our energy needs if these are well exploited and sustainably exploited. So Uganda has quite a very good energy generation mix for the grid, where we see hydropower dominating. We see a number of large-scale solar power plants coming online. We see wind energy developments coming up. So we see a lot of investment in cleaner technologies, and so for me that's the first message, that as we get more committed to protecting our environment, it is important to walk the talk, have our generation from cleaner sources. This is also seen in the off-grid. We know that
internet.
Recording stopped.
by providing
Recording in progress.
clean to the off-grid areas, and so for me that is also quite very important to note. And so all these show the commitment to be able to reduce our emissions and protect the environment. We see a number of course, also technologies now coming up. Productive use of energy is now one of the key concepts that are being pushed. That as we promote these technologies, because over time we have realized that the communities want to adopt these technologies, but often you have a challenge of affordability. So how do we make use of these technologies, especially for the rural people, for the different people, to be able to make an income, use these technologies as an income source, be able to get some revenues and income to pay for the technologies themselves, but also to better their lives. So their productive use of energy comes into play. And there's quite a number of productive use of technologies that are currently being pushed on the market. You have a lot of work in solar water pumping, you have a lot of work in refrigeration, cooling, you have a lot of work in quite a number of many other technologies. And this, as I mentioned before, speaks to the challenges that the communities are facing, because a rural person in the village wants to grow their maize and wants to get an income from the maize and wants their life to move forward. And how do you enhance that in their value chain? It means that number one is you provide a solution that is applicable within what you are doing. And one of those would be, for example, a solar pumping system. And so for me, providing these clean technologies, providing the right solution is the way to address some of this. You talked about climate change. We see that a lot of African communities still heavily depend, for example, on rain-fed agriculture. And so with these climate changes, how do we prepare? And so these clean technologies, solar pumping and other technologies help us to get more prepared, that even when seasons are changing, even when there are changes in the conditions, we still can produce and we still can be able to feed the communities. There is a number of mini-grid technologies, for example, that are being deployed. Mr. Datong talked about, rather than providing a solution for an individual isolated person, how do we look at centralized systems to be able to serve a number of people? And so for me, mini-grids is that one solution where you don't look at an individual, but rather a larger community, and then put them together by providing a more larger system, for example, solar system, to serve a bigger community. And for me, I think that's more sustainable, because then we combine resources together and make it cheaper. And so I talked about the diverse mix of technologies that we have, solar and wind and different energy sources. So for me, that role and commitment to continue deploying quite a diverse number of clean technologies and the other tailored solution for the off-grid communities to be able to bridge that energy gap. For me, these are the key developments that we see, and there's quite a lot of commitment both from the private sector. We have a very vibrant private sector. From the government, there's quite commitment to push clean tech and prioritize cleaner technologies to be able to achieve universal access for all. Thank you.
Very instructive. Solar mini grids, I think, is one of the most widespread clean tech solution in Africa, because of the geography of Africa generally. Coming to you, Honorable Sir. I know that Plateau State is big on ICT, and Plateau State very recently the Just Tech Fest took place, and the government there re-emphasized its support for ICT and the growth of tech in the state. And so I just want to find out from you how Plateau State is leveraging ICT to drive economic growth and development, particularly in sectors like agriculture, tourism, and healthcare.
Okay, thank you so much for that. In December 2024, we had a hangout with the governor of Plateau State, and he declared 2025 the year of technological advancement in Plateau State. And the community, the ICT community, was very excited about that, because you can't just run away from the adoption of the ICT technology, or technology generally, but particular reference to the ICT technology, because of its benefits. Even if you wanted to stay behind, you couldn't, because you would just be cut off and you start suffering. So we are actually working quite a bit on lots of areas where we have gone very far. 90% of the adoption of technology is in education, and education more is on the generation of data for the management of our educational sector. I think Africa has lots of difficulty in generating reliable data in many of its sectors of life, and education is one of those basic areas where governments are supposed to have very good control of the sector, and without data it's very difficult for government to take informed decision about the sector. The Sustainable Development Goals monitors quite a bit of indices like enrollments based on gender, like attendance in school, like the number of teachers that you have, even the subjects that you have. So without such data, it's very difficult for you to be able to get such data to even take decisions on the educational sector. In fact, when we are currently automating the data collection for public schools. We've done quite a bit in that, and the data gave us some surprising outcomes that we never really thought of. Areas where we thought they don't send their girls to school, we found out that they are the ones that even send their girls to school. Wow. So if you know, let me just be direct, and I'd like giving that example. If you know the northern community in Nigeria very well, you will think that the Hausa Muslim community does not send its girl child to school. But we had very surprising results from the data that we got. In fact, in most of their schools, on most schools situated around those areas, there are actually more girls in school than there are boys. So without this data, you may spend energy trying to talk to parents to send their girls to school. Meanwhile, the energy you need to put on is how they should send their boys to school. So there are so many areas where you have a lopsided number of teachers. Some schools have too few students for the teachers, and so on. So it helps us to streamline such data for the management of those schools. So we're not concentrating so much on online learning at the moment. We need to have a grip of the school in terms of data, so that when we're doing any intervention, we will be able to do targeted interventions. For example, for this number of students, how many classrooms do you have? What are the facilities that you have that will accommodate them? Or else, if you don't have that idea, you'll be doing interventions based on some political affiliations and so on, which the governor actually doesn't want to do. He wants to do targeted interventions. We are doing a similar thing in the healthcare, where we want to have a good grip of the kind of diseases or conditions that we have, medical conditions that we have within the plateau. So the World Health Organization does quite a bit on that, but sometimes when we look at the data, they are not really representative of what we that what is actually happening within the state. So we want to take charge of that data. For example, sometimes you have some interventions in malaria-treated nets, and what normally comes to mind is let me distribute it according to local governments, according to senatorial zones, and so on. But there are more. There are some areas or local governments that have more. They are all more prone to malaria, either because of the climatic conditions. For example, probably because the southern zone is more into agriculture. There are more plants there, forests are more there. Probably you have more malaria. But still, you need to have data that speaks to you, so that when you are, doing some intervention like insecticide treated nets, you will be able to know if there's any epidemic somewhere. You should be able to have it, on your own dashboard before somebody else comes to tell you that you are having such an issue. So we are working quite a bit. For some, it's just at the preliminary stages. For some, we've gone quite a bit. For some, we have deployed, and for some, it's actually futuristic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, quite interesting, sir. To mention that the governor has declared 2025 a year of technological advancement, in Plateau is a thing of joy to us, and I think CTH would literally want to leverage this in the coming months. Yes. Back to you, Mr. Bernard, if you're still on the call. So in Uganda, just to find out, how is the government supporting the advancement of clean technologies?
Great, thank you, Jesse. Thanks for that question. There are quite many ways through which the government is supporting the development of clean tech. Maybe I would want to start with the most obvious one is the policy development, because one of the major roles of the government is to develop policies. And so here we see that the government has tried as much as possible to put in place a number of favorable policies that contribute to, that provide an environment which leads to the growth of the clean tech. Just to take, for example, energy, the energy sector, the renewable energy sector, we have a number of policies in place. Just recently, last year, the government launched our energy transition plan, for example. This shows the path that we want to take by investing and harvesting the clean energy resources as we transition. Okay, we have a new energy policy, for example, which prioritizes generation of energy from clean resources, and also specifies commitments from the government in supporting the private sector to be able to deploy these technologies. So there's quite a number of policies and strategies that are in place to support. But beyond the policies and strategies, there are also quite a number of programs. Okay, just recently, last year, we launched, for example, a project which is, for example, supporting, it's called Electricity at Scale Project, a World Bank funded project with up to $600 million, and this is all going into clean technologies, providing subsidies to the end users, subsidies to the energy suppliers and the different players within the sector, on lending through commercial banks. So all these are ways that the government is trying to support the sector. Beyond the direct financing, we see another crucial area being incentives. So there are a number of incentives that the government has also put in place. Some of these are, through the tax incentives, for example. We have, for example, waivers on some of these clean energy technologies, solar equipment. Nearly all renewable energy generation equipment have waivers on the different components, tax waivers and tax holidays for the different projects, okay? So different clean tech projects attract different tax holidays. So for me, this is one of the ways that the government is trying to support investment within the clean tech. We also, I think the government has tried to make sure they put up the relevant infrastructure. I know that there's still a lot that needs to be done, but the government has tried to make sure they invest in the different infrastructure that support the development of the different. For example, if you look at the investments in energy transmission infrastructure, there's a lot more again that needs to be done, but there's already a commitment and investment to provide these infrastructure that then support the development of clean tech. Yeah. Thank you.
That's quite interesting. Mr. Honorable Sir, I know that in Plateau, the ICT Development Agency has some key initiatives ongoing. And so, would you like to share some on the program, just for our listeners to know, and also probably for our guests from Uganda to look at partnerships, and as well as CTH too, because at the end, I think this should lead to some very strong partnerships. So, would you like to share some initiatives that are undertaken by the Plateau State ICT Development Agency to foster a thriving tech ecosystem in the state? And then, when you do that, then you can also tell us if there are challenges that you're facing and how you're addressing these challenges. And lastly, if Plateau State is collaborating with other states and organizations that are into the advancement of ICT in Nigeria and beyond.
Okay, thank you so much for the question, and especially the opportunities that we could have to share with Uganda. And I'll be glad to talk about some of the things that we are working on. But before then, my last session, I concentrated more on the ICT part, and forgot that we're actually talking more of the renewable energy. It's just to say that the governor of Plateau State is very particular about renewable energy, and he wants to see that the Plateau State is sufficient in producing power for the state. And he has actually created energy mission, who is looking at various aspects of renewable energy and collaborating with quite a number of companies and providers to provide sustainable and renewable energy to various communities. At the moment, quite a number of communities, rural communities, have been powered by private sector, who take up the initial cost, and the residents pay over a period of time. And for most of them, the agreement is that over a period of 20-25 years, the power solution actually becomes that of the community. So I felt it's actually important that I make mention of this. Probably what I would say we are really mandated to do at the moment is related to what I had said in the last session, that the government really wants to be data driven, and the easiest way that we actually have this done, the cheapest way, is actually to ensure that the ICT community in Plateau is engaged more closely, so that we can do this adoption of technology in the various aspects that we need locally, because buying technology from outside your locality is actually very difficult. First of all, it's expensive. Number two, when the technology develops any issues, you don't have anybody next door to say, come, let's change this, come, let's work on this or that. The solution for education is actually done by a local company who had just a few schools he's managing. We took him up, and then he design that suits the data needs of the government, and he now has more than 500 and something schools, from a few schools to more than 500, and plus the ones that he was managing. So probably he will have about 1,000 schools now. So we have the agency has helped him to scale. By the time he's seeking for any contract somewhere, jobs anywhere, the number of schools that he would say he's managing would have increased by quite a bit. So we are really interested in working with local companies for most of the things that we want, except if we are not able to get the expertise within the state. I always tell the community that somehow we are locked in a circle of learning, and we keep learning and never do. And I think Africa, in various areas of our endeavors, we put more energy in doing the learning, and we don't do. If you go around, you'll see lots of people doing one or two things here and there. They will never seem to be able to adopt the knowledge that we already have in our people to provide solutions for things that we are doing here. I have one person in my community, the ICT community, that is providing smart homes. So he's not just an installer. He's actually he designs and makes those solutions for homes. But how much of citizens in Nigeria, in Plateau, would walk up to him to say, okay, I need this solution, come and provide it for me. So those kind of people, we want to see that we push them up, to see that they increase their production. We also stand behind them to tell anybody that would like to provide, to buy this kind of service, to say that it's a reliable solution and it's sanctioned by us. And then we have very close relationship with the ICT community. If we need to meet in the next 2 hours, I will assure you that we can get ourselves in one hall in about that 2 hours, because we are closely knit together, and that close knit is what we I think will bring us together. One other thing that we are looking at is how do we leverage on ourselves to work together on projects. What I discovered when I was appointed here is that our companies are actually too small to make impact. Especially if a company in America, for example, wants to hire a few people that will work on the next mission to Mars, they can't hire a company that has 2-3 Python programmers, because they need backups. Number one, they need people that will work concurrently. and then they need backups in case of when one of them has one issues or the other. So in Plateau, and I think generally in Nigeria, we have so small companies that individually they have their staff are very good, but they are not really sellable. So what we are looking at doing is we've started discussing with the community already. Is how do we get ourselves in these small chunks, present ourselves to the public as a very big company, because together we can boast of let's say maybe 200 very experienced Python programmers. But as individuals, we can just say, I have one, I have two, and then we will not be suitable for most of the requirements for big projects. Then, of course, I talked about the adoption of technology here. I've been talking to them that we need to see how we can get ourselves to provide solutions to our problems rather than looking up to government to buy solutions from you. Government is a bad customer. Well, not bad in the bad sense. As far once they have a solution, they have it. They won't buy another one until another many years. So how do we look around our communities, not to copy what somebody else has done? If you do another Facebook for Plateau State, you will not make it. I mean, because you need huge amounts of money. But behind you, there's this woman selling vegetables. And another person that needs these vegetables to be transferred to his, to be moved to his house, he has the money. How do we help her? How do we help the people to book taxis in advance on our motor parks? These are solutions that are not yet provided, but we struggle to copy, some solutions from that have worked, that have matured, and at the end of the day, we spend all the time and we are not able to, move ahead. So, in summary, I would say that we are collaborating very strongly with the ICT community here to ensure that we adopt and adapt solutions that they are providing, and also to ensure that we empower them with the enabling environment for them to run their applications within the state. Thank you.
Quite instructive, Honorable. And just to mention that I think Clean Technology Hub is looking at a partnership already with Plateau State. In in the area of ICT for education, because we're looking this year at starting an online academy, and I know that in that regard we'll be able to come up with a very forward-thinking proposal, and we'll reach out to you again, Honorable, on this matter, because it is something that will grow the youth, the youth constituency of Plateau State. I know that you're one of them. Yes, thank you, sir. Mr. Bernard, to you, and I think we just have about 8 minutes to wrap this up. So again, back to Uganda, looking at grassroots initiatives and the role of local innovators to grow the clean tech sector. What are the roles of entrepreneurs in driving this clean tech sector? Sector transition in Uganda. What are the roles of entrepreneurs? And then you can also, while answering that, you can just finally tell us what the future prospects are for clean tech in Uganda, so that of course from now we can look at other areas of continuous growth and development. Are there future prospects, roles of entrepreneurs in advancing that, and then future prospects?
Thank you so much, Jesse. Thanks for that question. And so for me, to start with, what becomes very interesting first in that question is the role of entrepreneurs, but also communities. Okay, we're talking about solutions for the community. Okay, for the different populations. So for me, then the communities become very important in whatever we are discussing, because these are the people who are going to use these solutions. Okay, so these are the people that are going to apply these solutions. So first and foremost, communities are very important. Number one, they need to inform the development of clean tech. I mentioned that the solutions that we are developing, tech solutions, must be able to solve the needs of the community. Okay, so it means that then making sure that we adopt the views and thinking of the communities becomes very crucial in the success of these technologies that we are talking about. Okay, so that is very important. We talk about we're talking about investment in infrastructure. When you talk about investment, you need community buy-in. A number of times we have these solutions and investments failing because the communities have not understood, have not accepted and owned these investments and technologies. So as we work on these technologies, making sure that the communities understand and have the views, and making sure that they own these technologies is very important. You also talked about entrepreneurs, and for me, I think this is also quite very important. For all sectors, whenever you don't have entrepreneurs and business people start to invest in such a sector, then it's hard to see growth in such a sector. So when you start to see businesses becoming successful, that then grows the sector, because we're talking about people who have money and want to invest and want to make profit, and these are the entrepreneurs. Okay, so we need the entrepreneurs to support along the entire value chain of these technologies. We have the development side, we have the supply side, we have the distribution. So along the entire value chain, you need to have different kinds of entrepreneurs, okay, to invest. Either at the production level, you need to have investors at least. Either in the distribution value chain, you need to have investment. So all of these are areas where you need entrepreneurs, and so the role of entrepreneurs in tech is very significant. Is very visible. We just need to make sure we give them a business sense, because whenever there's no business sense, the entrepreneurs don't have anything to play. How do we make sure that as we develop policies, as we make the environment more conducive, it should be conducive for the business people, for the entrepreneurs to be able to make money, to be able to come and invest. And so I think in that we can be able to grow the sectors. And Jesse, I think you talked about the future.
The future,
so for me, I also wanted to point a bit about, because when you talk about the future, you're looking at what are the areas of growth, what are the opportunities available, and this is a sector that still presents quite a lot of opportunities. The number of gaps that we see, which you would term as challenges, but for me, wherever there is a gap, there is an opportunity. Okay, whenever there is a gap, there is an opportunity. We see that one of the issues is a number of technologies on the market are still costly. They still require high costs, and I talked about the issue of affordability in the start. So for me, the opportunity there, we need to see a lot of innovation into innovative business models that are able to make these technologies affordable for the common people, affordable for the local people. How do we ensure that the rural people with a very low level of income are able to access these technologies? How do we innovate more, either flexible business models, or make sure we have packages for each and every community group? so that people are able to pick up these solutions and move forward. And so this is where I want to see the future going. I want to see packages for everyone based on their level of income, to be able to have everyone served. Number two, I see, for example, in Uganda, one of the key challenges is on infrastructure. I mentioned that there is infrastructure, but we are aware that there's still a need to develop more infrastructure, especially if you look at, for example, in the generation of energy. One of the key challenges we face is the lack of, for example, power transmission infrastructure. We have a lot of energy generation on this side, but you still have a big gap on energy access. It means that the energy is not transmitted to the people. And so there's quite a very big need to invest a lot in the infrastructure, transmission infrastructure. The advantage, for example, recently Uganda opened up for independent power transmission, for example. So this is an opportunity. How do we see more investors, more entrepreneurs, more investment in the power transmission, to be able to bridge that gap and see that the energy that is generated is reaching the end users? And so for me, this is an opportunity that the sector is creating. And this is where I want to see the future going. I want to see heavy investments in transmission. We're talking about the East African power pool and the other power pools that we're talking about as Africa. I want to see these investments coming to actualization, where you have Kenya, Uganda, and the rest of the countries connected together with one network, one strong network, so that now we're not talking about issues of grid integration. We have a strong network where we can harness the resources, and everyone can access energy. Still again on infrastructure, these days we are talking in Uganda, we're promoting a lot of clean cooking, for example, and we're talking about, for example, electric cooking, but we still have a bigger population that has no access to the grid. So how do we make sure that these people that are off the grid have the grid and are able to adopt technologies like electric cooking and the others? So I want to see, the future going there. Maybe as I wind up, some of the key concepts that I see. One is I talked about productive use of energy. I think the future is leaning so much towards using energy productively. There is a lot towards clean cooking because we are aware that cooking is one of the needs that takes quite a lot of energy, and Africa is a continent where largely cooking is done use fossil fuels. So there is a very large and huge opportunity in technologies that are efficient, that are applicable to the African people. So I think this is also an area to look forward. Maybe the other area is two areas.
Mr. Bernard, are you still there? I think we lost you. Okay, we lost Mr. Bernard here. So from what he's saying, I get that he's mentioning that there are opportunities for the renewable energy sector in Nigeria, in Nigeria, in Uganda, and in the rest of Africa. And he was trying to emphasize on the productive use of these energies, because even though we are generating clean energy, but then it is not translating into a productive use where entrepreneurs can get. Are you back, Mr. Bernard?
Sorry, I had the network cut very briefly. Sorry, I was trying to conclude that the clean tech challenges that we're talking about. How do we make sure we have reliable, internet and the others? But yeah, as I conclude, I think I talked about financing, so we need to see quite a lot of innovative financing mechanisms. There's been a lot of success with result-based financing, for example, in Uganda and many other countries. How do we make sure we have such more, financing mechanisms that can support this sector? Maybe one area that we also need to hint is the area of research. I think there is a need to focus a bit more on research and development. Our research as Africans is still quite lacking. There's not much research being done at different levels, whether applied research, whether any form of research. So we need to invest more as governments, as private sector, in research to have more tailored solutions for Africans, not just copying solutions. There's a lot of copy and paste on the market. The solution in Europe is just implemented the way it is. So they need to invest more in research and developing resource solutions that are more tailored to the African people. I didn't want to talk about skilling deliberately because, like Mr. Datong mentioned, there's been a lot of learning. I think it's a time to a bit put aside the issue of saying, okay, we don't have, we have a lack of local skills in Africa. I know that it's a challenge in some areas, in some African countries. For me, this is not a priority issue now. There's quite a lot of skills. There's been a lot of learning. So for me now, it is time to actualize and put focus on implementing what we have learned, and then we can learn more as we move forward. Jesse, thank you.
Very instructive. Thank you, Mr. Bernard, for this insightful response. We're hopeful that as we move on, that the private sector and governments across Africa will be able to adopt some of these solutions that have been mentioned here to scale up its energy transition and also its ICT advancement. As our time is fast spent, special thanks to Engineer Datong Gwaman Dominic. He's the Director General of the Plateau State Information and Communication Development Agency. Thank you, sir, for coming and for being online. Hopefully, we would engage you more and more in the coming months. Also, special thanks to Mr. Bernard Mbaine, who is the African Regional Representative of Hydro Pole Group in Uganda. Thank you so much for coming on this session. This session is proudly brought to you by Clean Technology Hub, CTH Podcast, and in partnership with Tech Talk Africa, Uganda. Until next time, do have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.